Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised. She was sitting alone at the cafe, a soft winter sun spilling through the window and brushing her silver-streaked hair with light. I noticed her the moment I walked in, not because she was the most beautiful woman in the room, but because she was the most quietly dignified. There was something in her eyes. Not sadness exactly. More like, the memory of sadness. The kind that lingers in the corners of someone's soul long after the tears have dried. I ordered my coffee and sat at the far end, pretending to scroll through my phone. But my eyes kept drifting back to her. She wasn't doing anything special, just stirring her tea, looking out the window, occasionally glancing at a photo she had tucked between the pages of a book. It was a small photo, black and white. From where I was sitting, I could barely make out two people smiling into the camera. A man and a woman. Her, maybe 30 years younger, and a man beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, his hand resting gently on her waist. She noticed me watching. Instead of turning away, she offered a faint smile. I smiled back. Then, almost without thinking, I got up and walked over to her table. "Is this seat taken?" I asked, trying not to sound nervous. She looked at the empty chair, then back at me. Her eyes softened. "It used to be," she said quietly. "But not anymore." That was how it began. Her name was Eleanor. She spoke with the kind of calm that only comes from a life filled with both love and loss. We chatted a while about nothing in particular, the weather, the cafe, the book she was reading. But eventually, the conversation slowed, and she glanced at the photo again. Her fingers brushed it gently, like she was afraid it might vanish if she held it too tightly. "My husband passed away years ago," she said suddenly, her voice steady but low. "He used to bring me here every Sunday after church. We'd sit at this exact table. Order the same tea. Share a slice of apple pie." I didn't know what to say at first. The weight of her words sat between us, heavy and unspoken. But I didn't want to walk away. Something about her story, her presence, made me feel like I had stepped into a chapter that wasn't finished yet. So I said the only thing that came to my heart. "Let me fill that empty space." Her eyes met mine. Not with surprise, but with something else. Something deeper. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't even hope. It was more like the quiet acknowledgement that sometimes, strangers carry pieces of healing in them. We started meeting every week. Just for coffee, at first. I learned she was a retired teacher, loved roses, and played the piano though she hadn't touched one in years. She told me about her husband, James. A kind, thoughtful man who always opened doors, remembered her birthday without reminders, and danced with her in the kitchen on rainy days. "I never thought I'd meet someone again," she said one afternoon, stirring her tea slowly. "And honestly, I wasn't looking." "I wasn't either," I replied. It wasn't a love story the way people imagine in books or films. It didn't explode. It didn't burn wild. It unfolded gently, like a letter written with care and sent without expectation. There were moments when we laughed like old friends, and others when we just sat in silence, comfortable and unhurried. Some people stared when they saw us together. Some whispered. She was older, clearly. I was in my late 30s, she was approaching 60. But I didn't care. And she didn't seem to, either. One evening, we walked in the park. The leaves were falling, golden and red, crunching under our feet. She told me about the night James died. A sudden heart attack. No warning. One moment he was making tea, the next, he was gone. "I still talk to him, sometimes," she admitted, looking ahead. "Just small things. I tell him what I've cooked, what flowers I planted. I tell him about you." I stopped walking. "What do you tell him?" She turned to me, smiling softly. That someone kind is sitting in his chair now. That someone makes me laugh again. My heart swelled and cracked at the same time. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. But nothing stays simple for long. One day, I showed up at the cafe and she wasn't there. No message. No call. I waited for hours, staring at the door every time it opened. The waitress, who had seen us week after week, noticed my worry. She hasn't been in for days, she said. Maybe something's wrong. I tried calling. No answer. I drove by her house. Lights off. Mail untouched. My mind raced with the worst. Was she sick? Had something happened? Or had I just been a brief, passing season in her long, beautiful story? I left a note at her door. Just 3 words, I'm still here. And then the door creaked open. She stood there. Pale. Quiet. A suitcase by her feet. And in her eyes, something I couldn't quite name. Fear. Regret. A goodbye. But before I could ask, she said something that would change everything. You shouldn't have come. And just like that, the silence between us grew louder than any words could fill. To be continued. I stood there frozen, her words hanging in the air like fog. You shouldn't have come. It felt like a door had closed, not the one behind her, but something between us. She looked tired, like someone who had been carrying a weight far heavier than I'd ever realized. Her hand trembled slightly, still gripping the handle of the suitcase. I wanted to ask questions. Where was she going, why she left without a word, but I couldn't find the right words. I just needed time, she said after a long pause, not meeting my eyes. Time to think. I didn't expect to see you here. But I waited, I replied quietly. I worried something had happened. She sighed, stepping aside just enough to let me in. I hesitated but crossed the threshold. Her house smelled faintly of lavender and old books. The kind of scent that wraps around you like a memory. The living room looked untouched, neat, quiet, too still. A photo of her and James still sat on the mantel. That same black and white smile I had seen at the cafe. I was going to leave town for a while, she said, setting the suitcase down. I needed space, away from everything. From you. Her words hit me like a cold wind. Did I do something wrong? I asked, trying not to let the hurt show. No, she said almost too quickly. It's not you. It's me. She paused, searching for the right words, the past. Some parts of it I haven't told you. I sat down on the edge of the couch. My heart was pounding. Up until now, everything between us had been soft, gentle, slow. But there was something sharp in her voice now, something hidden behind the calm. I know it's hard for people to understand, she continued. A younger man spending time with a woman like me. They think it's strange. They think you have some reason, something you want. And maybe I started wondering the same thing. I shook my head. I came to you because you were honest. Real. You made me feel something I haven't felt in years, safe. I don't want anything from you. Just you. She smiled sadly. That's the problem. I don't know who me is anymore. Her hands gripped the edge of the chair. She looked older in that moment, not in a way that had to do with age, but with sorrow. I wasn't always like this, she said quietly. After James died, I shut off. I stopped living. I went through the motions, grocery shopping, tending the garden, visiting the church. But I was hollow inside. I buried the pain so deep, even I forgot where I left it. And then you showed up. Out of nowhere. Like some echo from a life I thought I'd lost. She stood and walked to the window. Rain had started to tap against the glass. Her reflection looked blurred in the dim light. James, he didn't just die. He left things behind. Secrets. Doubts. Things I never shared with anyone. Not even my closest friends. I leaned forward. What kind of things? She turned to me, her eyes shadowed by something I couldn't yet name. Before he died, we had a fight. A bad one. He told me he'd done something unforgivable. And then, he collapsed. I sat still, not wanting to interrupt. I tried to forget it, she continued. To forgive him without ever knowing the full truth. But it eats at you. And now, every time I look at you, every time you hold my hand or make me laugh, I wonder, what if I'm not supposed to feel this again? What if I'm betraying him? Or worse, what if he betrayed me and I never found out? Her voice cracked slightly at the end. The first crack I had ever seen in her composure. I don't think love works like that, I said gently. I think we get pieces of it in different chapters of our lives. James had his time with you. But maybe that time passed, and now, maybe it's someone else's turn to hold your heart. She didn't respond right away. Just kept staring out at the rain. I found a letter, she whispered finally. After he died. I never opened it. It's still upstairs in my drawer. I felt my breath catch. Why didn't you open it? Because I was afraid, she said. Afraid it would confirm everything I suspected. That he lied to me. That the man I spent decades with wasn't who I thought he was. The silence between us grew deeper. Heavier. You can read it now, I said, standing slowly. You don't have to be afraid anymore. She shook her head. Not yet. Not with you here. My heart ached, but I nodded. Okay. Then I'll go. I moved toward the door. She didn't stop me. But just before I stepped outside, she spoke again. There's one more thing you don't know, she said, her voice low and steady. Something I've never told anyone. And if I do, you might not want to come back. I turned to her. Tell me. She looked straight at me, eyes gleaming with unshed tears. I think James had another life. Another family. I think I was just part of it. And with that, the rain hit harder, the wind howled louder, and everything I thought I knew about Eleanor shattered. To be continued. I stood in the doorway, her words echoing in my mind like a drum I couldn't silence. Another life. Another family. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked at her, hoping that somehow I had misheard, that maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But her face said everything. This wasn't just a guess. It was a truth she had been carrying around quietly, waiting for the right, or maybe the wrong, moment to finally speak it out loud. Eleanor turned away from me, walking slowly back to the couch, her hands brushing the fabric like she needed something to hold her steady. I never asked questions when I should have, she said softly. There were signs, late nights, unexplained trips. I convinced myself he was just tired. Just busy. I didn't want to believe the man I loved could hide something like that from me. I stepped inside again, carefully closing the door behind me, unsure if I was even welcome anymore. Why now? I asked. Why tell me all this now? Because I'm tired of pretending, she whispered. You came into my life and made me feel again. And it scared me. Because if I open that door, if I let you in, then I have to face everything I've been avoiding for years. She looked up at me, eyes searching mine, like she wanted me to give her a reason to keep going, or a reason to stop. I sat beside her, silent for a moment. Do you know anything about them? This other family? She shook her head. No names. No details. Just a few clues. Receipts in his coat pocket from restaurants I'd never been to. A birthday card tucked into a book that wasn't for me. I kept telling myself there had to be a reason. Maybe it was innocent. But in my heart, I knew. The tension in the room was thick, but something inside me refused to walk away. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something I didn't want to name yet. "There's something else," I said, hesitant. "That day you didn't show up at the cafe. I drove to the address you once mentioned in passing. The one you said James used to visit for work. I don't know why. I just had this feeling." Eleanor stiffened. "You went there?" I nodded slowly. "I didn't knock. I just sat outside. A woman came out with 2 kids. They looked, I don't know, familiar. Like maybe I'd seen them in James's old photos. The same eyes." Her expression changed, sharp, alert. "What did she look like?" "Dark hair. Mid-40s maybe. Wore a red scarf. The boy looked about 10. She swallowed hard, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "He always said he wanted a son," she said almost to herself. "We couldn't have kids." I thought maybe that was the end of the story. Neither of us spoke for a long time after that. The sound of the rain outside filled the silence. But inside, everything felt like it was cracking open. Days passed after that evening. I gave Eleanor space, though every hour I thought of her. Finally, she called. "There's a storage unit," she said on the phone. "James rented it. I never went there. I think whatever truth there is, it might be there." We went together. The place was cold, quiet, tucked behind a gas station on the edge of town. The lock was rusted, but the key still worked. Inside were boxes. Dozens of them. Files, photos, old letters. Some addressed to Eleanor. Some not. She picked up one envelope, faded and torn. No name. Just the word GIF. Written in James's handwriting. I watched her hesitate, the letter trembling in her fingers. "Do you want me to read it?" I asked. She looked at me, unsure. "No. Not yet. Not until I know I'm ready." Behind us, the door creaked slightly in the wind. A chill swept through the unit. And in that moment, we both knew, this wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about what we were willing to do with the truth. About whether love could survive unanswered questions. Or if some spaces were never meant to be filled. To be continued. The next few days felt like walking through a storm with no umbrella, quiet from the outside, but chaos underneath. Eleanor and I barely spoke after the visit to the storage unit. The letter marked "if" sat unopened on her dining table, like a ghost neither of us dared to confront. She stared at it often, sometimes picking it up, holding it like it might dissolve if she gripped it too tightly. But she never opened it. Not yet. I kept thinking about the woman in the red scarf, the 2 kids, the way they looked so familiar. Part of me wanted to track them down, ask questions, connect the final dots. But I knew it wasn't my truth to uncover. It was hers. And pushing her too far might make her retreat again. Still, the silence between us had changed. It wasn't cold, it was heavy. Like we were both bracing for something neither of us could name. Late one evening, Eleanor called. Her voice was quiet. "I want to open the letter," she said. "But I need you here when I do." I drove over, heart racing, unsure of what we'd find inside that envelope. When I arrived, the lights in her living room were dim. Candles flickered on the coffee table. She sat curled on the couch, the letter in her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. "I've had this for years," she whispered, "and I never had the courage to read it. I told myself it didn't matter. That knowing the truth wouldn't change anything. But it does, doesn't it? It changes everything." I nodded slowly. "Maybe. But maybe it also sets you free." She looked up at me, eyes full of something between fear and determination. Then, without another word, she opened it. She didn't read it aloud. Her eyes moved slowly over the page, her breath catching. I watched her face closely, how it shifted from confusion, to shock, to something I couldn't quite place. Her lips parted, but no words came out. When she finally looked at me, her face had gone pale. "There's a name," she said. "A name I've never heard. A girl. She would be about 20 now." My chest tightened. "He had a daughter." Eleanor nodded. "And he knew. He knew when he died. He left this for me because he wanted to tell the truth, but he didn't know how." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. A message. She glanced at it and froze. "It's from her," she whispered. "The daughter. She found me." And just like that, every wall Eleanor had carefully built around her heart for years cracked open. The past wasn't done with her. And neither was the truth. To be continued. The silver car was gone by the time we stepped outside, but something told me it wasn't over. Eleanor clutched the letter tightly, her breath visible in the cold night air. We drove in silence to a nearby cafe, somewhere public, somewhere neutral. That's where Clara had asked to meet. She was already there, sitting by the window, stirring her tea like she'd been doing it for hours. When Eleanor walked in, Clara stood slowly. She had James's eyes. There was no doubt. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Clara said softly. "I almost didn't," Eleanor replied. "But I think I've been waiting to meet you longer than I realized." They sat down, and the air between them was thick with years of silence finally breaking. Clara pulled out an old photograph. It was James, holding her as a baby. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "For when the time is right." Eleanor's hands shook as she took it. "He wanted me to know," she whispered. "He tried to reach you," Clara said. "Before he passed. My mom stopped him. She didn't want the past to resurface." The pieces were finally fitting together. James had kept his other life hidden, but in the end, he hadn't wanted to leave it that way. The letter, the photo, it was his way of making things right, too late but still meaningful. Then came the twist. Clara slid another envelope across the table. "He left this for you." "Not her." "For you," she said, nodding at me. I opened it, heart racing. Inside was a short note in James's handwriting, "Thank you for looking after her. She'll need you more than you know." I looked at Eleanor. She was already staring at me, eyes wide, and full of something that felt like peace. And something else. To be continued. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The letter in my hand felt heavier than it should have. James had known. Somehow, even in his final days, he saw what Eleanor couldn't see yet, that healing wouldn't come from burying the past, but from finally facing it. And that maybe, just maybe, love had a way of finding its way back through the cracks. Clara stood up, reaching for her coat. "I'm not here to replace anyone," she said gently. "I just wanted to know who he really was. And now I do." She looked at Eleanor, then at me. "Thank you, for letting me in." Eleanor walked her out, hugging her like a mother would. There was no anger, no regret. Just quiet acceptance. She watched Clara walk down the street until she disappeared around the corner. Then she turned to me. "I spent years thinking love ended when someone left," she said. "But maybe it just changes form." We sat there for a while, the weight between us no longer heavy but grounding. There was still pain, still grief, but now there was something more, clarity. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor and Clara kept in touch. I stayed close, not to fill James's space, but to create something new beside it. Something honest. Something ours. Looking back, it wasn't just a story about a lost husband or a hidden daughter. It was about what happens when the truth finally shows its face. And how even in the most unexpected places, love, real love, finds a way to return. And that's how it all began, when she said, "My husband passed away years ago." And I replied, "Let me fill that empty space."